Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. My name is Diana Conway, and I'm president of the Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club. We're thrilled to have you here. We had a very robust sign up, and I see people are still filtering into the room. So thanks for joining us today. We have a great program for you with the unique Brooke Lierman. Brooke has the remarkable distinction of being not only Maryland's first woman comptroller, but also the first woman elected statewide to a non-federal office on her own ticket. I have a few housekeeping items to get through that I know are probably a little tedious for some of you who've been here repeatedly, but please bear with me. So this is us at a September event that we're going to be hosting again this September to sort of kick off the fall season. We are a more than 60-year-old club. We do speaker series like tonight, community education panels with sort of several people at a time who speak to something more regional, candidate forums. We do state and county advocacy, which is an increasing part of our work. Get out the vote for the election cycles, and something very fun and productive called Happy Hour with a Purpose. So we would love to have you join one of our committees, which is on the next slide, and also to help us really amplify our advocacy in Annapolis and at the county. So as always, I want to thank our hardworking board and their teams. We have board members who put together programs like this tonight, like Barbara Zelenko, as well as Gloria Aparicio and Tazeen Ahmed and Laura Stewart. We have a very robust advocacy team in Annapolis on all our signature issues, which is led by the intrepid Joanne Korovos, completely unflappable. Our comms team is led by Lisa Fuller with a really tremendous support from her committee, including Tracy Diani and Millie Kahn, who's been doing our newsletter for many years, and Allison Bennett, who runs a lot of our social media, and Bonnie Chernikoff, who does our interviews that it was new feature in our newsletters. Our finance committee is helmed by Mary Lou Fox, who manages to keep us out of trouble with the IRS. And our membership committee is led by Enid Light, who will be absolutely launching into our return to the happy hours with a purpose. The first one is going to be May 7th, so save that date, more details to follow. And we have the return of our partnership and outreach committee chaired by Fatmata Berry. And the goal of that committee is really to establish standing connections to organizations in the civic activist space so that when things come up, as they will, we are ready to connect and collaborate. This is a really strong team, and it is truly a pleasure working with them and with all of you, really to make a difference in our community and our state. So on that note, not only do we want to ask you to join with us in the advocacy and in the work and in our social events and our speakers, but also to join the club. It's just $35 a year. I think the dues have not gone up for like 8 or 10 years. And the money goes strictly to credit card processing fees and room reservations and covering the food when we have social events. Nobody's getting much of a paycheck around here. So I hope you will consider joining for $35 a year. We have 2 upcoming events. Oh, let's see, is that the next slide? Sorry, these are our recent speakers. And we just had Jason Green talking about the African-American heritage of Pleasant View Church, right in our own Gaithersburg. And as you can see, many others. And these are all on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch them and share them with other people to convince them what a great club we are. Upcoming, thank you, is former County Executive Ike Leggett, who's also a former County Council member before that. And he is chair of the statewide committee that is in charge of implementing the blueprint, the chair of the Maryland Accountability and Implementation Board. So he's going to be joining us April 20th at 6:30, also on Zoom. Please bring your questions. It's an enormous amount of money. It's an enormous lift and a project to really bring our educational system, pre-K through 12, up to the standards we deserve and that we are paying for. Next slide. Okay. So after Ike, we're going to have Adam Ortiz, who's the former chair or head of the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection and was raised up by President Biden to be the regional administrator for EPA for our entire Mid-Atlantic region. So April, as you probably know, is Earth Month. So we'll be inviting Adam to come talk with us. And then May 11th, we have Representative David Trone, who represents D6, which still has a big piece of Montgomery County. And June 14th, in advance of the June 19 date of Juneteenth, we're going to be hearing from Renaud Smith of the Sandy Springs Slave Museum with the goal of understanding the history of Juneteenth and also how to best make the work that has happened so far get amplified, since we face so many challenges. And then finally, at the end of June, either the 21st or 22nd, we're just trying to secure a venue, we will have our biannual meeting and elections. So please hold both days, I guess, for now. And of course, always, we want to hear your suggestions on speakers you'd like us to include in our summer and fall calendars. Let's see, do we have any elected officials in the room? I know Andrew Sondry is here from the Central Committee. Oh, okay, and Mayor Dia Costello from Chevy Chase? No, sorry, Mayor Costello, I am sorry, I'm not remembering which jurisdiction you are from.
That's all right. I'm from Glen Echo. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, and I think that's it. So, final reminder, you are being recorded. Oh, sorry. Yes, we would love to have your questions for Brooke. So if you go down to the bottom, there's a chat button. And if you click on chat, you can choose who to direct your chat to. So you can either type in or scroll down to find Q&A, and that will get to my question sorter person. You're welcome to put anything you want in the chat as long as everyone behaves properly. But if you want it to get to Brooke, please make sure to put it into the Q&A section. And I think, Scott, we're just going to say that everybody's muted, and I think that's it. So on to our program. So normally we had expected to have Jamie Raskin here to speak to you live. And in the meantime, the Republicans have messed us up, and to put it politely. So he is not able to come, but he put together a video at the last minute because he so wanted to be part of this event and to be able to introduce Brooke. So I would like to ask if we can cue that video. Great, thank you.
Everybody, it is Congressman Jamie Raskin from Maryland's beautiful 8th District calling out to my most beloved friends of the Women's Democratic Club. Hello, President Diana Conway and Laura Stewart and Lisa Fuller and Joanne Corvos and Mary Lou Fox and Tazina Ahmad and everybody else who's there. The best laid plans. The Republicans have screwed up my evening schedule along with everything else in the country. We've been voting, and so I had to move this other event with Hakeem Jeffries to be opposite your guys. I'm going to try to drop in person in real time if at all possible, but I really just wanted to send you my deepest gratitude and my deepest solidarity and my deepest love. It continues to be crazy on Capitol Hill. We had a hearing all day long about the Republicans trying to overthrow some more legislation that our friends down in DC passed to have reform and police accountability. Lauren Boebert thought that this somehow was going to change an old law against public urination. And so we talked about that for, I don't know, about an hour. I think that's kind of what the whole hearing turned into. And I think that the people of DC were the people being rained on by our hearing about public urination. Anyway, you get a sense of what my life is like here. But I am very sad to be missing our friend Brooke Lierman, who has shattered all kinds of political glass ceilings by becoming our statewide comptroller and winning statewide as a woman. So I'm saluting you, Brooke, and I'm saluting you, Diana, and everybody else that continue to make the Democratic Women's Club the beating heart of Democratic activism in Montgomery County, which is our dominant Democratic county now in the state. So thank you all for what you're doing, and thank you again for the beautiful get well cards and wishes, and bandanas and hats. This is one of Little Steven's, you know, the E Street Band was in town over the weekend, and Little Steven brought me a whole new bag of bandanas. So I think I'm going to have to create a bandana quilt before it's all over. But anyway, that's pretty soon. I go in for my 5th treatment on Friday, and then my last one is in April. And God willing, I'm going to come through it. And you and I have many, many great battles to fight together. So I look forward to seeing everybody in person. And I am grateful for the heroic work of the WDC. Thank you so much. All best.
Boy, talk about resiliency, right? Congressman Raskin. So we're going to move now to introduce our speaker tonight, Brooke Lierman. So I'll just go through the sort of the formal stuff here. Brooke Lierman is the 31st Comptroller of the state of Maryland and the first woman to be independently elected to one of our state's 3 constitutional offices, meaning she was not running as a lieutenant governor to a governor, she was running as Brooke Lierman to Brooke Lierman. After running a strong, policy-focused, grassroots-led 2-year campaign, she was elected with over 60% of the vote in November 2022. She is an attorney by training, practicing as a civil rights and disability rights lawyer for many years. And prior to her election as comptroller, she served for 8 years as a member of the House of Delegates representing part of Baltimore City. She and her husband and 2 school-aged children live in Baltimore. I have to tell you, she's now our comptroller, and I was with Brooke a few days ago at a Democratic trustees event where she spoke for a few moments and revealed that among the other things that she had, the other messes she might have to clean up, there was the matter of holes in the building and the roof, I think, and the presence of bats in the offices. So there are surely all kinds of good jokes to be made on that, but I think what we're going to do is just let Brooke talk a little more seriously. I'm going to drop in the transition report, which is a terrific document that Brooke brought together a terrific team, and they issued a transition report for this new comptroller. And I hope you have a chance to look at it. So Brooke, all yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. And hello, Women's Democratic Club. It is so great to be with all of you. I'm just, I was looking forward to this discussion, and I'm thrilled to be here. So Diana, thank you so much for the introduction. It was so, of course, amazing to see Congressman Raskin. I'm so glad things are going well for him because, yes, as some of you wrote in the chat, we need him. We need him down there fighting for us in DC and really holding the line on sanity in our country. Just really, really appreciate all of your work and all of the amazing organizing that all of you do as well. I have a little girl here. Can I come back in a second? You want to wave? Say hi. Okay, I'll come down in a second. Okay. Yeah. Yes, you can. You can. She's asking for dessert. Yes, go ahead. So I'm thrilled to be with all of you. And it's been a little bit since I've seen some of you. Sometimes I miss the campaign trail where I'm out all the time, but now I am all the time working with our comptroller employees, getting still around the state. This morning I was in Prince George's County for their Chamber of Commerce women's breakfast, a sold out event to bring women business owners and women in business from all over Prince George's County together. And I'm just really excited about the work that we have started doing in the comptroller's office. So I wanted to come tonight to just talk with you for a little bit about how things are going in the office and to take your questions. I'm really excited to be here and experiencing my first Women's History Month as the 34th Comptroller of the state of Maryland and the first woman to hold that position. So, it was interesting. Yesterday, I had a gentleman come in and ask me a few questions about my time and the work that I'm doing. And he said, why does it matter that you're a woman? Why does it matter that you have a seat at the table? Why does it matter that our comptroller is a woman? And I talked to him for a while about why it so matters. But at the end of the day, I think the saying is true. If we don't have a seat at the table, then we're on the menu. And so it's so essential, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg used to say, that in all places, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. because, you know, I love to say, and I truly believe that we all do better when we all do better, but it is also absolutely true that we all do better when women do better. And the success of our state and the success of a society is so dependent on the success of women and how we treat women and making sure that women can fulfill their full potential, because then we see communities thrive and societies do better. So I'm just delighted to, it's been a really exciting first 72 days in office, but who's counting? You know, and as Diana said, we have tackled things from, you know, setting up fire drills for my 600 employees to sealing holes in ceilings so that bats aren't coming in to bother our taxpayer services employees while they're trying to answer phone calls to help people pay their taxes. You know, we launched tax season. We've been working with the cash campaign to get the word out about the earned income tax credits, the new senior tax credits and more. So we've been doing all of this work, hiring people, setting up our new organization, and we released a transition report that I'm really proud of. So soon after my election, which happened thanks to you, all of you who were so instrumental in making sure that we broke this glass ceiling and that I won. So thank you again and again for your tireless efforts, for making sure that people knew they shouldn't skip comptroller on the ballot, and that this is an essential position in our state. But soon after November 8th, I started pulling together a transition team. And we wanted to make sure that it was a team that was focused on the work that the Office of the Comptroller does, right? So we set up several work groups, including, you know, pensions and investments, public engagement, local government engagement, our public works and procurement, and of course, tax payments and customer engagement. And through these work groups, we had over 100 participants, and then we had over 100 people write in with very substantive and impressive and very thought-provoking comments as well, to make sure that we could pull together ideas from all over the states. And I'm really proud of the transition group that we pulled together. There were people from all over the state, multiple ages, multiple races, you know, everybody was involved, and they met multiple times on Zoom to go over these ideas and to collect best practices. And that ended up in a great report that we just published several weeks ago that I'm really proud of, and that we are going to take seriously and involve, and as our divisions in the Comptroller's office are working to come up with strategic plans, the heart of those strategic plans will be the recommendations from the transition committee and our teams. So I want to talk a little bit today about just what we've been focusing on in the Comptroller's office, and make sure that you sort of understand where we are and the work that we're doing, and that I need you to stay involved. There is work to be done, and we need your help. So I'm sort of breaking it down right these days into a few buckets. First is that to have a great comptroller's office that can do the work on taxing, you know, on making sure that we're engaging with constituents to have fair and equitable tax administration, on making sure that we're thinking through our procurement strategies and more, we have to have a great team. We have to improve the employee experience in the comptroller's office. And that means making sure that we can pay people what they're worth. And it also means making sure that we're recruiting great people and keeping them and providing great workspaces. So as Diana said, we had bats. We are getting rid of bats because you cannot keep great people in the office if they are batting away flying objects. So we are working on improving our facilities and making sure that we can pay people what they're worth, and working closely with the governor's team on next year's budget. You know, for instance, I'll say the starting salary for a lawyer in the comptroller's office when I started was $60,000. We can't expect to hire great attorneys, tax attorneys at that, for $60,000. So we have to make sure that we're paying people as the professionals that they are, so that they can do the work of bringing in the revenue, of working with Marylanders and providing great service. Number two is modernizing the office. There is so much work to be done, and it's not just closing gaps in walls. Our tax processing system, our general accounting system for the state, they are both housed on a mainframe server. that the Comptroller's office owns and maintains. And they use the software programming language COBOL. So these are systems that run our state and run our entire state's revenue process and all of our financials. And yet they're written in languages that we can't even hire people to use anymore, and that employees don't want to come if they're young, because you don't need to be trained on that kind of technology. It's of no use to you any other place. So we have hired the agency's first ever CIO. And I'm really excited. We actually got the former CIO of Baltimore County from Johnny O, who was instrumental in taking the Baltimore County from mainframe to the cloud. He'll now be helping us to take the Comptroller's office from the mainframe to the cloud. So really excited about that. But there's more work to be done as well. For instance, our agency doesn't have a customer relation management system. When I started, there were 6 document management systems being used. So much technology work to be done to make sure that we're really improving processes and meeting people where they are. And I like to remind people, we don't modernize just for modernization's sake, right? We modernize our systems so they work better for Marylanders, so that we can pay our bills more quickly, so we can reimburse nonprofits for the grants that they applied for and won, so that we can make sure we can track our payments and understand how and where we're spending our money, so we can meet our MBE requirements, right, to do better. And that's why this is such an important exercise and such an important goal. And then finally, the final thing that we're really doing, and where the transition team report also comes in, is that we're reimagining the impact that the Comptroller's office can make. So my goal is for the Comptroller's office to always be focused on building communities that are more equitable, more resilient, and more prosperous. And that means reimagining how we are thinking about our procurement system. Through the Board of Public Works, not only are we responsible for approving or denying contracts, but we're also responsible for writing all the regulations for our entire procurement system in the state of Maryland. And there's work to be done. Just yesterday, I was with our procurement team in the Comptroller's office, and I said, I'd like to see the template that the state uses for putting out an RFP. And they pulled it up. It's in a 184-page template. 184 pages just to start with for an RFP for the state of Maryland. This is simply, it's simply unacceptable. It instantly creates huge barriers for small businesses to respond to, for people to put the time in, and it creates big barriers for agencies as well. Right now, the turnaround time for some of our contracting for larger contracts is over 270 days. Well, by the time you get through that process, if you're procuring a new tech system and then you negotiate the contract, it's over a year to bring in a new product that's a tech product. It's too long, and it holds the entire state back from achieving our full potential and from working in communities to do important work. So there's so much work to be done there. We're also thinking about how we support our economy and how we really make sure that our economy is working for Marylanders. One of the jobs that I have is to chair something called the Board of Revenue Estimates. And it's this body that's responsible for really understanding the economy in Maryland and then estimating what our revenues can be so that we can base our entire budget off of our revenues. Well, you might have seen a couple of weeks ago, we met for the first time as me as chair, with Secretary of DBM Helene Grady and Treasurer Davis. And the estimates were not great, right? We estimated that we reduced our FY24 estimate by about $400 million. And I characterize what we see happening in the economy as flashing yellow lights. We are seeing underperformance versus the national economy in many ways, both in our unemployment, in our and just the rate of growth. So there are some concerning signs, and we have to understand why. We're coming out of a pandemic. The federal money is starting to slow. Now it's going to be more competitive grants through the latest bills. So we don't know our walking speed yet, our economy's new walking speed, where we're going to settle. So it's up to us in the Comptroller's office to work with the Bureau of Revenue Estimates within our agency to get out and understand that. So we're going to do it differently. I said to our director, do you ever go talk to business leaders and talk to leasing companies about what's happening on the ground. And he said, no, we haven't done that. And I said, well, we're going to do that, because that's how you really understand what is happening in an economy. And you can't just sort of read all the reports that are coming in. You have to get more timely information. And so we're excited to be working to start setting up meetings around the state and certainly in Montgomery County to understand what's happening on the ground so that we can better estimate what our revenues will be and what's happening in our economy, and then be able to be prepared to give advice, right, to the governor, to the General Assembly, to make sure the economy is growing and growing in a way that works for everyone. So I'm thrilled. I'll start my day on a call about, risk management and fire drills, and then go into discussions about revenue estimates, and then talk to, meeting with people in the 11 branch offices around the state. Actually, on Friday, we'll be meeting with the Wheaton branch office staff. I'll be in Wheaton. And then we'll have a discussion about procurement and whatever's coming up on the Board of Public Works. So every day is a new day. It's been incredibly exciting. And I've loved doing this work so far. There's so much work to be done, but incredible potential for this office to really make a difference in the lives of Marylanders, small business owners, moms, dads, grandparents, seniors. I'm really excited about what we can do. So I'm thrilled to be here as well, because we can't do this work without you. We need to be partnering with people on the ground, with organizations, to talk about how we can spread the message of what the comptroller does. And as we get up and running, we are going to be recruiting volunteers, right, to help with tax prep services for people with low income and seniors, to think about how we can bring tables and materials to different fairs, and, whether it's a fair and a parade where we talk about here's the office of the comptroller and the work we can do, or whether it's some sort of festival in the summer. It's important that we get out there and we let people know they can claim their unclaimed property, they can file their taxes, they can get these refunds. Here are the tax credits that are owed. Here's how you start a small business in the state. We've got to get the word out, and we definitely will need your help for that too. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited to answer your questions, and thanks so much to the WDC for all of the great work you do. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Brooke. That was very energizing. You have always come across with a whole lot of energy. And I don't know if everybody knows Brooke's dad, Terry Lierman, was state party chair for a while himself, and continues to be in the background, but he shakes his head when I see him about how much energy you have, and the fact that you just keep charging ahead with 2 small children and a whole new set of issues to cover, and backstopping from prior years of neglect of various aspects. I hope you will start by talking a little bit more about the Board of Public Works, how unique it is to Maryland, and a little bit more about what it does, how it works, and why it's, I feel like it's a little bit like boards of election or public utility regulatory agencies. Like, it's below the radar, but it has huge power, huge power.
Powers. Yes.
And you're one of 3 on it.
One of 3. Yes. So the Board of Public Works, for folks who don't know, is a 3-person body in the state of Maryland. It's the highest administrative body in the state, and it is unique in all of state governments across the country. There is no other Board of Public Works. There's nothing like it. And it's a body that was set up in the 1800s because of rampant fraud to approve or deny every contract over $200,000 and a host of other things. So all grants to sort of nonprofits that come through the budget, wetlands licenses, program open space dollars, and more, all comes through the Board of Public Works. And we meet every other Wednesday. So we didn't meet today, we're meeting next Wednesday. And we go through all of these agenda items. So I think the average is about $400 million every other week that we approve. So it's a huge numbers that we're looking at. And one of the things that I think is so important for people to understand is what I said, that this is a body that's not just about approving or denying contracts. It's a body that's tasked really with making sure our procurement system works for the state, works for state agencies, but also works for contractors. And one of my very first meeting of the Board of Public Works, it was a little surreal, I'll be honest. I sort of, got up there with Governor Moore. I sit to his left. left and Treasurer Davis sits to his right. And you know, in my opening statements, I just sort of laid it out. I said, look, you know, this is where the buck stops, and we have to be focused on meeting and exceeding our minority business enterprise goals. That means that we're making sure that we are awarding contracts to our Black-owned businesses, our women-owned businesses, our immigrant-owned businesses, working with those businesses and our small businesses for the Small Business Reserve Program, making sure that our dollars are not just erecting structures, but that are actually building communities. And that's the power of procurement, right? That our procurement dollars, the tax dollars that we're spending, are going to build a stronger and more financially resilient economy in every community. And that's one of the things that I'm very focused on. In fact, we have a new BPW director in the Comptroller's office, Jasmine Clemens, wonderful woman who came from Johnny O's, County Executive John Olszewski's team, where she ran all the ARPA funding. I'm really excited about a new deputy comptroller who's overseeing the BPW work. He actually was an economic development advisor for Montgomery County. Ben Siegel lived in Silver Spring for many years, recently moved to Baltimore. And we're really excited to work with you and others to make sure that we are really being transparent about the work of the Board of Public Works, but also to make sure that we're rethinking how we spend our money to ensure we're hitting those MBE goals to build more financial prosperity around the state and support our businesses. So I'm really excited about the work that we can do there.
So earlier on, you said that we all do better when we all do better. And I think that was a quote from your former boss, Paul Wellstone,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And I wonder if you would talk a little bit. I mean, you mentioned minority contractors. I've seen over the years, you know, getting more and more time in Annapolis, various forms where somebody says, yeah, we tried to get a minority contractor, couldn't do it. Check that box, check that box, check that box. No women, no minorities available. What is the system for, what is the process for analyzing whether that is just we checked the box, or we really tried, there was nobody suitable? Because I mean, we don't want unsuitable, but
Right. No, it's an important question. So the first thing we're doing is that our Jasmine and our BPW team is meeting with every procurement officer at every agency. And we're going through all of the work that they do, what their process is for deciding whether contracts are eligible for the MBE program, you know, whether there are subcontracting options. And then MDOT, the Maryland Department of Transportation, oversees our permitting process for MBE program and has a complete list. So we're also going through that entire list to understand it better and to see where the gaps are, and working with our procurement officers on that. You know, and this is not something that
you said Jasmine is meeting with the procurement people from every agency. How many agencies are there?
It's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. There's
10,
like
100.
No, not that many. There's probably about 20 or so. But it's, you know, it's important that we have established relationships, you know, whether it's the Department of Natural Resources or the Maryland Transit Administration or, you know, State Highway. It's important that we understand what their process is. So when there's a challenge or an issue, we can go back to them and we have a relationship and we can say, look, we don't think, you know, we think this is wrong. We know contractors who can work in the space and we need to understand why this isn't happening. One of the challenges, again, though, I will tell you, is technology. We do not have the technology to track contracts right now. So we sign off on a contract and it's gone. Like, there's no sort of online dashboard where we can follow what's going on with those contracts. And that's something that we should absolutely have. I mean, you as, you know, Diana or Barbara or Maria, you should be able to log into a system, look up a contract, see how much is being paid, see what the MBE attainment is, and understand it. And we don't have that ability right now as Marylanders, and that's a real problem. So that's something that I was actually just talking with our Senate President earlier about it. That's something that we absolutely have to bring in to the BPW so that we can follow these things more and so that we can hold our contractors accountable. If they say that they are going to, you know, they bring a contract to us or they bring a proposal to the BPW and it says, yes, we are going to hit, you know, 28% MBE through our subcontractors, and then they do the entire contract and it turns out they've only hit 10%, well, that wasn't the deal, right? That's not the deal we struck. But now it's too late because the entire contract has been performed. We need to be able to follow along as they're invoicing so that we can see whether they're meeting their goals or not. And that's not something that we currently have the ability to do because of a complete lack of technology in this space. So that's something that we're interested in. You know, it will take some time, but we want to start moving forward on that as well.
Well, I love the idea of a dashboard, and I know,
Yep.
at least on the state legislative side, this year when people tried to sign up to upload testimony or sign up to testify, there was something of a new system. And I wonder is the legislature ahead, or are they just kind of over there and you guys are over here and everybody's struggling to keep up? I mean, have pieces of the government, is the governor's office, have they figured out a better process? Do you feel like?
I think we are all sort of struggling through and muddling through. I will say that now, you know, one of the interesting things I've realized is that there was such a disconnect between the General Assembly and the agencies and the Office of the Comptroller. There was very little interaction, very little sharing of resources. I'll give you one example. The very first thing I did when I entered the office was to start asking about our cybersecurity protections. We have a lot of data and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to keep it safe. And the state had offered, had done a statewide procurement on doing a security assessment, and we had not participated. Well, I said, well, we are going to participate. And it was the first thing I signed, that we were going to do a full security assessment of our entire agency so we could find any weaknesses and any gaps and we could fill them immediately. And that was the very first thing that we did. So, you know, but the fact that the agency hadn't opted into that statewide contract was a little bit troubling. There was no reason not to. There was no cost to our agency. So those are the sorts of gaps that we're now trying to fill to really make sure that we're partnering and working together.
Wow, that's a little disturbing. Maybe some of what you're telling us isn't so.
Yeah,
So this is a kind of a longer question about incineration. And so there are 2 incinerators left in Maryland. There's one in Montgomery County up in Dickerson, and then there's one in Baltimore called Bresco.
Pleasure, they come to pick you up.
I'm sorry, somebody needs to mute, please. Thank you. So you're known as a progressive and progressive on lots of issues, and I know on the environment as well. The question goes, transitioning away from trash incineration is not only beneficial to the environment, it is also fiscally responsible. Healthy alternatives like composting, recycling, and source reduction are also more cost effective. How do you see the comptroller's role help to build that transition, such as through monitoring the cost of trash incineration or pushing state investments towards composting and recycling infrastructure? And I'll just speak personally and say that I've been working for several years with the coalition trying to get incineration removed from what's called tier 1 or preferred treatment for, quote, renewable. And so the idea that you're burning trash so it's infinitely renewable, I don't think that's what most people think of when they think of renewable. So that needs to come out.
Yeah,
I would
no,
love
I agree with
your
that.
help on that in particular, but go ahead.
Yep.
Larger point.
No, I agree. Look, this is a really important issue to me, and I supported that legislation, Diana, as you know, in the past, and certainly have spoken out about Bresco and the challenges there. Of course, I represented the district right next to it. So, you know, one of the things that I'm excited about is trying to figure out the ways in which my office can be helpful to build a more resilient, a more climate resilient state. And so excited for ideas. You know, we're hopeful that we'll get enough new positions that we can create a resilience officer position and a sustainability officer position within the Office of the Comptroller to help lead these efforts. Because you're right, my hook is a little bit on funding and revenue and how to track that. And so that's exactly, you know, sort of why we want to bring in a position to do that, is so that we can speak up and speak from a place where the comptroller as a CFO can say, this is something that we need to do for our revenues as well. So totally in agreement with that. It's sort of figuring out how we make sure that we're doing it from a space of authority in the comptroller's office. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, one of the questions is, are VPW meetings open to the public? I put up earlier, you can live stream them, right?
Yes, you
Um,
can live stream them. That was legislation that Delegate Corman worked on. So you can live stream all the BPW meetings. You can see all the agendas. They're posted, over a week ahead, and you can see what's coming up. You can live stream them, and I think they're open to the public. Certainly, there are members of the public in the room. So I assume, I don't know if you have to sign up, just because it's a small room, but certainly they're open. They're in the State House, and now they're in person again. So yeah.
So I think you touched on this earlier, but the question was whether we have a surplus. And I think the idea was initially we thought we did, and then between inflation and the change in the overall economy.
Yeah, so there is and was a surplus. I mean, a surplus doesn't disappear because of less revenues. It disappears because we spend it, right? And so the revenue estimates decreased, and so there is less money to spend, but certainly the surplus, does exist, but it's being spent, right? I mean, there's money that's going to the rainy day fund, but there's also money that we're spending on the Blueprint for Maryland's Future and on transportation projects and on capital projects. And so the money is, being accounted for and being invested as part of our budget. The revenue estimate decrease was some about FY23, but the bulk of it was about FY24 and starting July 1st. And that was a 400 million write down is what we call it. That from December, when we had an estimate on FY24 to March, we decreased by $400 million what we think we will bring in FY24. We still expect to see growth in our revenues, about 1% growth rate, but it's less than what we thought was going to come in FY24. But look, those are, we will continue every quarter we meet to have to update our revenue estimates. So it's sort of constantly evolving and changing as we get new information.
Is some of the decrease due to not getting to the sort of the federal benefits going away as the emergency is tapered down?
Absolutely. So the federal money that we got through ARPA, that federal money is ending. And we always knew that was going to be just for a couple of years, and it was just for a couple of years. And now the federal money that's going to come through the Infrastructure Act and the IRA, much of that is formula driven, but even more of it is competitive grants. So we need local governments and state agencies to go out and write applications to bring that money home.
Is there, I mean, one of the things that I've heard from local officials that I've talked to, just stuff in Annapolis, is that there's this sort of miasma of federal money out there, and it's the way people feel about changing their electric supplier. I mean, you can, but how do you find it? And it's just really hard. Is that part of the dashboard plan?
Yeah, so that's part of, the governor's office of grants, I know is thinking about this. We actually in the comptroller's office are thinking about how we can provide help specifically to local governments to identify grant opportunities. I was literally talking today to Ben Siegel in our office about what our role would be and how we could do that. And the other group that's coming out is some of the advocacy groups see, oh, there's transportation dollars here or park dollars there. So, I think it will come in all different spaces, but certainly it's something that, our local governments, we want to make sure that they're aware of the opportunities.
If you had to name your top 2 or 3 priorities for your term, not necessarily next week or next month or the holes in the roof, where would you put those?
So number 1 has to be modernizing our agency. We just cannot live like this anymore. We have to bring our agency into the 21st century to create more transparency, to create better systems, to make it so that people are paid more timely, to make it easier to pay your taxes and to track your payments. So we have to modernize. So certainly my number 1 priority, and it's going to take a while, right? It takes time to do. These are incredibly complicated tech solutions that have thousands of interfaces that take, years to build, literally years. And so this is not going to be an overnight, oh, look, now we have a new system. This is going to take time, but we have to start, and we have to be smart and efficient and just get it done. So certainly number one is modernizing our agency. Number two is really making sure that all facets of the agency, whether it's the Board of Public Works and our procurement power, whether it's thinking about the state of the economy through the BRE, whether it is our unclaimed property division, whether it's our policy team thinking about how to work with and support our small businesses, whatever aspect of the agency it is, I want to make sure that we're also really focused on how we can get out into the community, how we can make sure that communities, that small business owners, that older adults, that students, that parents, that everybody understands how the Comptroller's office can be their advocate and is focused on building communities, families, nonprofits that are more equitable, more resilient, and more prosperous. So I think they go hand in hand, but those are sort of the big picture, two really big goals of mine.
So I want to first compliment you on having immediately kept some campaign pledges, which was to go right back out into the counties and show up on the ground during. So I know you were in Montgomery County for the tax day to buy.
Oh yeah, we kicked off tax season. Yep.
And
with
actually,
the
I think
program.
you were with one of our former board members, Tracy Diani.
Yes,
So,
nice.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I think you probably get an extra gold star for having taught people and educated people about what the comptroller actually is and what the comptroller
always
does.
Trying.
So in terms of the tech that you're saying is going to take years to build, I presume all the states are constantly facing this. You're constantly struggling to get technology up to where it needs to be for people who are used to, in the private sector, everything zips right along. Is there, I assume there's some association of state comptrollers or equivalent.
There is. So my role is really unique in American government. There are very few elected state comptrollers, and none of them have are the revenue administrator. And I also have many of the properties in my office that most treasurers are elected, that many of the treasurers do. So I'm actually part of the National Association of State Treasurers, the Federation of Tax Administrators, and the National Association of State Comptrollers. I am a member of 3 national organizations, and I was just at the National Association of State Comptrollers conference last week, where I met the Illinois State Comptroller, Susanna Mendoza, who's fantastic. And there's some other, I met the Connecticut one who she's elected, and the Connecticut one's elected. And there are a couple others, but very few. And really those offices are all about accounting, right? We have accounting, we're the general accountant for the state, every dollar in and every dollar out. That's through our accounting agency, the General Accounting Division of the state of Maryland. But that is the bulk of what every other comptroller does. That's basically all they do. And so much of the conference was focused on modernization of our systems. Right. And we are probably the last in line to move to a cloud-based system off of a mainframe.
Wow.
So basically every other state, I think there are 4 states that are still on a mainframe, but I believe the other 3 have already started their procurements. I brought only a few bills this year, and one of my bills was legislation for the General Assembly to tell our office and the treasurer and the secretary of DBM and Intuit to go get a system and modernize FEMIS, which is the name of our general accounting system, the financial management information system. It's also called R-STARS, which is its trade name. But so looks like that bill is going to pass. And it was really important that the General Assembly put its imprimatur on this idea, because it will be one of the largest and most important procurements that the state ever undertakes, because it will affect every single agency. It will affect every college. It will affect anybody who gets paid by our state or pays our state. So it is just thousands of interfaces and interactions. And so
It's hard to
I thought it
imagine
was
that there's,
essential.
sorry, it's hard to
Yep.
imagine that there's anybody who doesn't either get paid by or pay the state.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so huge. It's hard to even, but like if Towson University wants to build a new dorm, every contractor is paid through our office, right? If through this system, all the invoices come in. If you are a nonprofit who receives a grant through a local bond initiative, all that payment comes through goes through our office, right? So all that accounting, it all goes through our office. So it's a really important system. And so it's important for the General Assembly to weigh in and say, yes, we believe in this and we need to do it. So I'm excited about how the hearings went. They went really well. People get it. And we're going to start moving forward on that after the legislation passes.
Were there any people in opposition? Or was it sort of the Republicans say stop spending money?
No, everybody's been supportive so far. They've been unanimous. People get it. They're like, we got to pay our bills and we have to pay them on time and we have to do it in a better and quicker and more transparent way. And that's what this is about. So
that's really good to hear.
Mhm.
So how does it work with you deciding you'd like a bill to go through? Do you just go pick a favorite legislator or the chairman of the committee, or how does that work?
It's a good question. And actually, I can introduce a bill on my own as my name through the Speaker and the Senate President. So I asked the Speaker and the Senate President to introduce it, and it's introduced sort of in my name, but through sort of courtesy of the Speaker or the Senate President, and then I go present the bill. So that was one of our bills. Another bill that I'm excited about that looks like it's going to pass is to create an office of the taxpayer advocate in the office of the comptroller. The IRS has an office of taxpayer advocate. More than half the states have office of taxpayer advocate. And this is an office that's dedicated to sort of being an advocate for taxpayers and understanding any of the systemic challenges that taxpayers are encountering with your state systems, uncovering barriers, working to make it easier to pay, and deal with the tax system writ large. So really excited to see that also looks like it's on its way to passage as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
So the money has to come in and go out through your office, but you're one of the 3 votes that when you gave the example of a community college getting a grant for a new dorm, I mean, at some point, some of these bonds must be so small that you just sort of, you're like, yeah, okay, 50,000 here, 10,000 there. I mean, how do you have the time to focus on the minutia of all these individual bonds and grants and contracts?
It's a good question. So every 2 weeks, we have the BPW meeting, and I have a big binder, and about a week before, I got it yesterday, so over a week before, I go through with my team and we go through each item that's going to be on the agenda for that week. If we have any concerns, I literally go through every bond, I read each one. If I have questions or concerns about any of them, then I bring those back to the Board of Public Works and I talk to my counterparts on the BPW and I say, I have questions about this before it comes, or and then I can go ask my questions. And if I'm not satisfied, we can say, I'm going to be against this, or I'd like to have this removed from the agenda because it needs more work. And we all have the option, all 3 of us can do that. I think you'll find, in some ways there's fewer fireworks at BPW meetings, perhaps, because we're doing a lot of the work in between the meetings to make sure that we understand the programs and know what's coming. So that's a little bit how it works, if that helps.
Yes. So, and I'm sure there would be more fireworks if we had the other governor. Mr. Cox, for example, had won that race.
Yes.
So for the final question, I'm just going to read this one. We're struggling getting schools built, especially with inflationary pressures on construction. For instance, in Montgomery County, the new Woodward High School, which is on Old Georgetown Road, started at 125 million and is now at 200 million. Build to learn money will soon wind down. What is your role in facing this looming issue?
It's a great question and a really important one. Look, I think we have to be really clear and honest about how we want to spend our tax dollars and how we want to invest. And we have to remember that we have to prioritize. And so that means, do we spend, where are we, what are the first priorities of our state? And I think, first and foremost, it has to be to make sure that we are maintaining and building high quality public buildings like our schools, to work in our agencies, public hospitals, not privately owned hospitals, but like our public hospitals, our public facilities, transportation, right? These are public goods that we have to prioritize. And then I think every other capital expense comes after that, right? For instance, we don't have a women's pre-release center in the state of Maryland.
You
right?
hit a
You all know
WDC hot button.
You all know this. We need to make sure that we're prioritizing capital funding for programs like that. Those are state facilities that we have to maintain. And I mean, this is a difficult thing to say because I think in the coming years, our nonprofit community, who are sort of been used to having more capital dollars available, might start feeling the pinch more because we have neglected many of our public buildings and because costs are rising. And so we are going to have to spend more of our dollars maintaining and building our public buildings. And so I'm just being very frank and honest about it. Like I think that first and foremost, we have to make sure that we're spending our money to support our public buildings. And then everything else after that, it's a cherry on top. And that is how we have to make sure that we're having dollars available for our schools.
Well, we're going to wrap it up, but I just want to read the comment from former WDC President Beth Tomasello, who once you said Women's Pre-Release Center, I knew that a whole bunch of people out there, their ears went straight up. She's been a real champion getting that built, getting it funded. So we hope to see it built. And her comment is, thank you for your support of women. And I know it extends well beyond that project, but I really just want to thank you for joining us and for your time and for your leadership and your energy and your enthusiasm and for getting the roof fixed. I mean, you mentioned a whole bunch of public buildings that needed to be built well, but you omitted your own. So we have our fingers crossed for you to get that done. Maybe we'll have a tour sometime once it's all.
Yes, please. It is an open building. I will tell you my final thing that I'm really excited about is that many of you know I am a huge supporter of the arts and pass bills in support of the arts. And we had a sort of empty hallway in the comptroller's office on the first floor of the Treasury building. And I met the executive director of the Black Art Today Foundation. And so we have an art show up now in our hallway. It's beautiful. The employees love it. The governor came to see it and, loved it. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about is reimagining our public spaces and our public buildings and how they can welcome people and welcome artists and be a space for the public. And so please know that you're always welcome to come to 80 Calvert Street in Annapolis when you're visiting your state delegate or state senator. We are just down the path with the Louis Goldstein statue in front. And I have that little corner office behind Louis. So you're always welcome to come by and say hello. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brooke. We're going to quickly wrap up. I want to remind everyone that we have been recording this so you can share it with others who need to know what the Board of Public Works is and what the minority business enterprise, how that works and how it plugs in. I think we have a slide for our upcoming, there we go. Remember April 20th, 6:30 via Zoom. This is a whole bunch more money while we're talking about money for education. And former County Executive Ike Leggett is chairing the statewide Accountability and Implementation Board. There is a lot to be discussed there. And I want to make sort of somewhat of a personal note here. We started with Jamie Raskin, and I would like to point out that his son, who passed away, as we all know, there's a pantry named after him in Tacoma Park now. It's called Tommy's Pantry. And I'm excited to say we're hosting a fundraiser, non-political fundraiser for Tommy's Pantry. It's on April 30th. And if you get in touch with WDC, we'll be happy to give you the details. It's minimum price of $50. And obviously it's going to support communities in need as the federal money dries up. So thank you all very much. I hope to see you for Ike Leggett's event on April 20th, and hope everyone has a good and safe evening. And thank you, Brooke.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Great to see you, Diana. And thanks everybody for all your work.
Good night, all.
Thank you.